I usually do edits, but I wanted to address this video and correct the lack of facts and context. If this video gets enough views, I'll make more content like this. By the way, I'm using a TDS model, so this is entirely scripted by me and not AI. I'll try to go over this video made by EU, made simple point by point.
The United States accounted for more than half of NATO's total defense spending. And honestly, when you look at these numbers, it's kind of easy to understand why many Americans have called for Europe to do more. Because the argument is super simple and kind of convincing. Why should Americans pay for European security while Europeans spend their money on very large welfare systems? But to be very honest with you here, that picture is so far from complete. In fact, you could argue almost the exact opposite. America's enormous military spending? By design. Europe's dependence on the United States? Again, by design. And Europe's freeloading on American security? That actually may not be all Europe's fault, but part of how the system was built, and crucially, how the US actually wants it.
So he's saying that them being freeloaders is our fault? Crazy statement. Let's continue. This next clip highlights something that Europeans always forget. The troops stationed in Europe act as a tripwire force, meaning if another country invades Europe, we are immediately drawn into the conflict and are obligated to respond. Our mere presence in their countries is a deterrent from attacks and invasion, especially considering Russia's aggressiveness. Our American troops are putting their lives on the line to defend them.
Not only leads NATO, but also maintains a major on-the-ground presence, with over 70,000 troops permanently stationed across Europe.
His next statement brings up something else that's very interesting. He tries to make the argument that the US benefits greatly from the alliance because of our bases in Europe, particularly Ramstein Air Base in Germany.
Guys, think about what this actually means. Europe gave up its military autonomy for American protection. And for 70 years, that was a bargain. Europe gained something that rarely existed on the continent before: lasting peace. But let's not forget the return here. The United States also gained something extremely valuable: a massive, permanent platform to project its power across the globe, used to beat the Soviets and beyond. And the US has used it. For example, many US drone operations in the Middle East today are coordinated through Ramstein Air Base here in Germany.
But polls from as far back as 2020 show that 47% of Germans support reducing the number of US troops in Germany, while about 25% said they wanted a full withdrawal. 25% seems like a small number, but for something that is actively protecting them, 25% of them saying they want us gone is massive. The next clip shows that this guy is intentionally leaving out information.
In 1998, France and the United Kingdom agreed on a bold idea. Europe should be able to act militarily on its own. And soon after, the EU announced an ambitious plan: a 60,000-strong rapid deployment force, ready within 60 days and able to sustain operations for up to a year. Washington, though, was not enthusiastic. US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright responded with what became known as the 3Ds. No duplication of NATO, no discrimination against non-EU NATO members, and most importantly, no decoupling from the United States. The message was very clear: a strong, independent European military, one that could act without the US, was not desirable, because ultimately it would weaken American strategic influence in Europe. And to be honest, ever since then, European militaries have become far less capable of acting on their own.
This misses the fact that 5 years later the NATO response force was created, consisting of troops from all member states, and is currently 500,000 strong.
Because specialization and interoperability within NATO have pushed European countries to buy more and more and even more American equipment. Have a look at these numbers. This chart shows where European NATO countries have sourced their imported weapons from over the past 4 years. On average, European NATO countries source 64% of their military gear from the US, and that's basically billions of euros flowing straight into American defense giants. And for Europe, this dependence comes with yet another consequence: Yeah, the list literally is getting longer and longer. Many militaries are now so deeply locked into American systems. And the best example here is the F-35. On paper, it's the most advanced fighter jet ever built, which is why so many European countries, from the Netherlands to Poland and Germany, decided to buy it.
Now, this is a true point, but it's missing important nuance. Out of all NATO member states, only the U.S. has the manufacturing capabilities to supply so many troops. Our equipment and technology is reliable, advanced, and the best in the world. On top of the United States' capabilities to mass produce them, it is only the most logical option. Not to mention that Europe can't even agree on weapons and standardization for each other anyway.
From a very high-level perspective, that's the deal at the heart of NATO. Now, I really want to emphasize this, and especially for you American viewers. The US gets a lot out of this relationship. It gains global power projection, political legitimacy, and billions flowing into its defense industry. And us Europeans have accepted that trade-off because we got something invaluable in return: security. But now, things really are rapidly changing. The US is really not keeping their side of the bargain.
Saying we're not holding our end of the bargain after making up your own version of the bargain is insane manipulation. He's basically saying, look at the chart I made up. It proves my point.
For years, the magic number was 2% of GDP. But the goalposts just don't stop moving, because now that demand is 5%.
Once again, missing all context, 2% has been the goalpost since 2014, and that goal was rarely met. We moved the goalpost again because the world is rapidly changing and conflicts are near. If Europe had been meeting their 2% commitment earlier, they wouldn't have to be playing catch-up today.
And only this week, it's the same playbook once again. Trump warned NATO it was making a foolish mistake over Iran, threatening a very bad future for the alliance. In other words, back US wars, even the ones that Trump has started, without informing his allies or risk America walking away from NATO.
Strangely enough, Europe wanted the U.S. to eternally dump money into Ukraine, but when we asked for a few minesweepers, you say, I'd rather not. Europe asked America to pour out our money to defend another country that is completely irrelevant to us. But now you complain about having to back the U.S. up in anything? And don't think I forgot about when the Netherlands and the U.K. stopped intelligence sharing because we were blowing up drug boats. I genuinely want NATO to last, but unless there's more burden sharing and more appreciation, you can't call it an alliance. We don't need European lectures or for them to look down their noses at us, because we don't have free healthcare and infinite welfare. We need real cooperation and appreciation. If the U.S. feels like it has a threat to itself, it should be taken seriously by the European members of NATO and vice versa, not just brushed off because they don't want to be bothered. American opinions of Europe are high and always have been, but the same is not true in reverse. And before you say, but Trump destroyed the alliance, these surveys and polls of European opinions on the U.S. go back years. That's the end of my video. If anyone even sees this, let me know your thoughts in the comments.